All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse Hildebrand, and welcome to another very exciting hangout with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those who don't know, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Today, I'm excited to say we're joined by 6 classrooms from across the United States. I'm going to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. So first, we've got Mrs. Sinclair's class from Kalispell, Montana. I know your mic isn't working, but we can see you waving, so that's great. We have Mrs. Lynch's class. They'll be coming in a minute, also from Kalispell, Montana. We have Mrs. Burkett's class from Sterling, Virginia. We've got Mrs. Stover's class from Lecanto, Florida. Someone's very high. Awesome. We've got Mrs. Brown's class from Frederick, Maryland. Hello.
We look depressed, honestly.
We've got Mrs. Pandal's class from Austin, Texas. Nice. It upped on its way there. Awesome. Okay. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is to hear our speaker. We're joined with Rachel from the Turtle Hospital in the Florida Keys. The Turtle Hospital rehabilitates injured sea turtles. They do education for the public. They do research with universities to make sure that sea turtles aren't injured and don't end up in their hospital. And all around, they do amazing work. We're thrilled to join them for Rachel, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Well, my name is Rachel, and I'm an educator here at the Turtle Hospital, so welcome. We are located in the Florida Keys, and we are actually on Marathon Key, and that's the middle key, so it's between Key Largo and Key West. But what you're looking at is the Gulf of Mexico, so we're located on the bay side, and we have the Atlantic Ocean on the other side, and we're going to get turtles from both sides. So just a couple things you want to remember when we're talking about sea turtles. They are reptiles, so they're cold-blooded, they lay eggs, and they breathe air. They have lungs just like we do. Now, there's 7 different species or 7 different kinds of sea turtles in the world. We get 5 species here in Florida, and we actually have 4 represented at our hospital today. So in total, we have 48 sea turtles at the hospital today. So let's go in and get started. Main rehab area back here. So these are a lot of our newer patients, and a lot of them still require medications and wound care. But our first turtle right here is Caroline. So Caroline is what we call a loggerhead sea turtle. You'll notice this very wide head covered in brown spots, and they're pretty much brown all over. This is how they get the name loggerhead. When they would come up to the surface to take a breath of air, ship's watchmen from far away could not tell that was a sea turtle, so they would shout out, "Log ahead." To them, it looked like a log floating on the water. Now, the reason why their head is so big is because it is all muscle. Sea turtles don't have teeth, and they have to rely on their beaks to get their food. Loggerheads are eating crabs, clams, lobsters, things in really hard, crunchy shells, and they have to be able to crush through those shells. So they have extremely strong jaw muscles. Their jaw pressure is 800 pounds per square inch. So that is stronger than a great white shark. Their bite is stronger than the bite of a great white shark. And these loggerheads get huge. They can weigh up to 400 pounds. Caroline, she's only about 150. So she's what we call a subadult. She's just a teenager. There is no way to know the exact age of the sea turtle. It's all an estimate, a guess, based on their size. But they have 5 life stages: hatchling, post-hatchling, juvenile, subadult, and adult, and it takes about 25 years to reach adult size. So Caroline is just a teenager. Now, she came into the hospital a little over a month ago. She was found floating at the surface. She couldn't dive down. So when she got to the hospital, we took an x-ray, and we found out she had an impaction. And impactions are very common for the loggerheads. Because they're digging in the sand looking for their food, they're going to eat some sand. And they don't digest that too well. It can get stuck. And over time, it clogs things up. So we had to give Caroline some medicine to help her pass all of that sand, basically to help her go to the bathroom, which she did. So she's doing a lot better now, but she still has some gas buildup. So she has a really bad tummy ache, and she's still floating. So this is why she has that little green block attached to her shell. It's styrofoam. It's a piece of a pool noodle that you play with in the pool. So that little floaty is going to help her stay even and balanced in the water, just until her gas passes. And then once her gas passes, she'll no longer float. She'll be able to dive, and then we can release her. So she probably has another 4 to 6 weeks, and then she'll be ready to go back home into the ocean. So she's doing really well. She's becoming more active and starting to eat more, so that's always a good sign. But her floaty is just held on with some Velcro. So again, we'll take that off before she is released. Now you can see on top of her shell, she has this lighter patch. Now the shell, the bottom shell is called the plastron, and the top shell is called the carapace. And the carapace is made up of keratin. Keratin is the same material as our hair and our fingernails. So those scutes, that's what the plates are called on top of the shell, the scutes will shed. Just like your hair sheds, the scutes on the sea turtle shell will shed. But when Caroline came in, she had lots of barnacles attached to her shell. So when we gave her a bath in fresh water, the barnacles came off, but it took a piece of the scute with it. So we have some sunscreen on top of her shell. That's why it's lighter in color, because we don't want it to get burnt. So they can get a sunburn. So she has her sunscreen on now, and then when she's no longer floating, of course, we won't have to put the sunscreen back on. But the scute, it grows back in. It's just like when you break a nail, your fingernail, it's going to grow back. Same thing happens with the scutes. So those scutes do grow back in. And Caroline is just resting on a big tube. You're going to see turtle toys and lots of the tanks. So we have tubes, squares, triangles, rings, hoops. They're all shapes and sizes. And they have 2 uses. One is for sleeping. So they do sleep. It's just not how we sleep. All they're doing is holding their breath for a very long time. They can stay underwater up to 5 hours. So in the ocean, they like to wedge themselves under a rock or tuck into a reef, and it helps them feel safe while they're resting. So sometimes Caroline likes to stick her head in the tube while she's sleeping. They'll also scratch their shell. So their shell does get itchy when algae is growing or when their scutes are shedding. And when they're in the ocean, they can just scratch against rocks, or they go to cleaning stations near the reefs and they let the fish and shrimp pick off the algae and clean their shells. So they can feel, they have nerve endings, and they do like to scratch their shell. So that's what their turtle toys are for. Now over here we have a turtle getting his medicines. This is Chuck Norris. So Chuck Norris is another loggerhead sea turtle, and he was hit by a boat. He came in about a month ago, and he was hit by the propeller. So you can see on the top of his shell, he has the cuts from the boat propeller. Now, this is going to heal. It does get better, and he's doing great. He is in a full tank of water. He's able to swim. He can dive. So we will be able to release Chuck Norris once his shell has fully healed. It's going to take a few months, but he will get there. In the meantime, we have applied some surgical brackets to his shell. That's what these silver bars are. And they're just held on with some really strong glue. It's actually the same glue that you use on horses to apply their horseshoes. So those bars act like a cast. You know, when you break your arm, you break your leg, you need a cast so the bones can heal. Well, we can't really put a cast on a sea turtle shell, so we're going to use these little bars instead. And we'll take those off before he is released. But he's doing great, so he's just getting his medicines now, just getting ready for a little shot. And then while he's out of the water, they can also clean his shell and clean his flippers at the same time. So remember, they breathe air. It doesn't hurt him to be out of the water for about 10-15 minutes. And then once he's all done, he can go back into his tank. So he's going to be okay, going to be just fine. Now we have a couple more loggerheads over here. we have Brianna, and she's very big. She's about 164 pounds. And then we have Dawn in the same tank. Now, you'll notice we have a fence, a divider. The loggerheads, they don't play well with each other. They tend to be a little aggressive and territorial. And since they're meat eaters, they're going after live prey, so they're a little more feisty than the other kinds of sea turtles. So we have to separate the loggerheads so they don't bother one another. But Brianna, she came into the hospital last summer, and she was also hit by a boat, but it wasn't the propeller, it was the bottom of the boat. And sometimes when they get hit by the bottom of the boat, air gets trapped in their shell, and we can't get the air out. And this makes the turtle float. And it's their back end that's floating. So when they have this kind of injury, it's said they have bubble butt since their bottoms float. So Brianna has bubble butt. Now, when they have this bubble butt injury, they cannot go back into the ocean because they're floaters. They can't dive down to get to their food. They could get hit by another boat, and they're very vulnerable to predator attacks. So when they have bubble butt, they are non-releasable. And right now, out of our 48 turtles, 17 of them have this bubble butt condition, so 17 are non-releasable. Now you'll notice Brianna is not floating right now. She is sitting flat on the bottom. That's because we've attached weights to her shell, and the weights will hold her bottom down, and it keeps her even and balanced in the water so she can dive. But these weights, they're just glued on, and eventually they're going to fall off, and then we'll have to replace them. So that's why they can't go back into the ocean wearing the weights. They're a little hard to see on Brianna because her shell is so dark, but there's two round silver weights at the back of her shell, and that's what's holding her bottom down. So she is non-releasable. Don, he will be released, and he is huge. He's 200 pounds, so he is considered an adult male loggerhead, and we know that he's a boy because he has a very long tail. Now, right now, when he's sitting on the bottom, he's got his tail kind of wrapped around his back flippers, but his tail is very long. So the boys have very long tails, and the girls have very short tails. So Don is an adult male, and he came in just a couple of weeks ago. He was found entangled in fishing line, and the fishing line was wrapped around his flippers and his neck, and it was very tight around his neck, so it was very hard for him to breathe. So we were able to get him into the hospital. We got all the fishing line off. Now he's doing great. He's just finished all of his medications, so he's now ready for release, and will most likely release Dawn next week. So he's very close to going back home. With these big loggerheads, we're going to take them back to the beach close to where they were found, and we make it a public release so people can come out and watch them go back home. So it all just depends on the size and type of turtle as to where they're released. And Don really likes that running water. He'll spend a lot of time under there. That's basically a head massager for him. So they really enjoy their spa treatments here at the hospital. And this is a different type of turtle. This is Nereus. Nereus is a green sea turtle. Now you'll notice she does not look very green in color. That's because they're green on the inside. The green sea turtles are herbivores, so they eat lots of plants, mainly seagrass, sea lettuce, and algae, but they eat so much seagrass that it turns their fat, it turns their insides a green color. So that's how they get the name green sea turtle. These are the second largest out of the 7 species, so the greens get bigger than the loggerheads. They can weigh up to 500 pounds. But Nereus, she's just a juvenile. She's closer to your age. So most of the greens that we have at the hospital are juvenile greens, probably between 4 and 12 years old. The reason why Nereus is at the hospital is because she has a virus. This virus has a very long name. It's called fibropapilloma. We call it the FP virus. But it causes tumors. And the tumors are little bumps. They kind of look like cauliflower or broccoli. They're just pink in color. But it causes tumors to grow all over the turtles. And these tumors grow over their eyes. That's going to be hard to find food if they can't see. They grow all over their neck in flippers. That's hard to swim. And they even grow around their mouth, and that's difficult to eat. And we really see this virus in the juvenile greens because they're hanging out here in the Keys, around Hawaii, further south in the Caribbean. Very warm water areas with a lot of runoff. Thing we do on land, like pesticides, road waste, such as gasoline and oil from our cars, agricultural fertilizers, all of that runoff, it's going to wash down into the ocean every time it rains. And around here, those chemicals are getting into the seagrass beds. So the greens eat the polluted seagrass, and it weakens their immune system. It just makes them very sick, and they're not able to fight off this virus. Over half of the greens we get at the hospital have it. So this is the most common thing that we're treating here at the hospital. So we can treat it. We can do surgery. We can take the tumors off. And then the turtle's going to stay with us at the hospital for 1 year. We're going to make sure the tumors don't grow back, and then we can release the turtle back into the ocean. So Nearest just arrived a couple of weeks ago, and she's already had 1 surgery, but she still has to wait out that year. But she'll be okay. She's in good condition, nice, healthy body weight, really pretty green. Over here we have another loggerhead. This is Vibora. Vibora has pneumonia. Pneumonia is something that we can get. So pneumonia is just a really bad lung infection, like a severe cold in the lungs. So she's still on lots of different medications, lots of antibiotics. It's going to be a few more months until she's ready for release. But you'll notice her water, it's low. It's not all the way to the top. This allows her to rest. If we put her in a full tank, she would have to use up all her energy to swim to the top to breathe. And that's really hard to do when you have a lung infection. So we're going to keep her water level low, and that allows her to rest until she starts to feel better. And she still has some breakfast in her tank. So she's got some squid down here. The loggerheads we're going to feed 2 times a day. We'll feed them squid, fish, and shrimp. And that is not live. It's just frozen. Now, the green sea turtles, since they're herbivores, we're going to feed them lots of veggies. So the greens will eat lettuce, kale, green peppers, peas. They eat vegetables all throughout the day. And here we have another loggerhead with an impaction. This is Tippy. So Tippy's just like Caroline. She's already past her impaction, but she still has a little bit of gas buildup. And it's almost out. We can actually see that on an x-ray. But she's become very active. She was really skinny when she came into the hospital. She's already gained 10 pounds. So she's eating lots of squid. She's doing great, becoming more active. And we've already taken her floaties off. She still has the Velcro on her shell, but we've taken her floaties off because she is starting to dive down to the bottom. So she's doing great. The tube that's in her tank, this is the vacuum cleaner. So every morning, all of the tanks are cleaned. And this is salt water. We just pump the water in from the ocean. So this is natural salt water. And of course, we filter it and we clean it. So every morning, all their tanks are cleaned. And some of the turtles really like the vacuum cleaner. Some of them will attack it. They like the way it feels on their back. So you might see some of the turtles scratching with the vacuum cleaner. And here you can see that really big head. And over here we have a turtle, a green sea turtle, and his name is Bubblebutt. So this is where it all started. So Bubblebutt was the very first turtle that came into the hospital with this kind of injury. So our hospital opened back in 1986, and Bubblebutt came in 1989. So that means he's at least 30 years old, at least. But again, there's no way to know for sure. And their average lifespan is 80 to 100 years. So they do live for a very long time. But since he was the first turtle to come into the hospital with this kind of injury, that is how he got his name. And that's why it's now called Bubblebutt condition, all because of him. So he is an adult green sea turtle. And you see he's got that long tail, so he's definitely a boy. And then the large oval silver thing on his back, that is his weight. So that's what's going to hold his bottom down. And he's about 140 pounds. He's pretty big. And then over here we have the largest sea turtle at the hospital. This is Rebel. Rebel is 250 pounds. So you can see his long tail. He is an adult male loggerhead. He also has bubble butt. He's got the weights attached to his shell. But Rebel was rescued back in 1991, and he was adult size back then. So we can safely say that Rebel is in his 40s or 50s at least. But who knows? He could be close to 100. But he is definitely the biggest turtle that we have right now at the hospital. Okay, before we head over to the other side, how about we do a little question break?
Absolutely. All right. So what we can do, Rachel, if it works for you, is I can go through each of the classes and they can each do a question, and then you can go to the other side and share a little more. Does that work?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So Mrs. Lynch's class, we'll start with you guys. If you guys have a question, go right ahead.
Anybody in our class have a question? What would your question be?
So Mrs. Benedict's class, we're going to do Mrs. Lynch's class first. I'll come to you guys in just a second. Mrs. Lynch's class? Nope. Okay, well, we'll go to Mrs. Brown's next. Or Mrs. Brown's class. Do you guys have a question?
Yes, my question was, when you said that Bubble Butt was the first person to have that, was the first sea turtle to have that disease, was the name national or international? Or is it just...
It's mainly for the sea turtle facilities that are in the U.S. So now everybody kind of says when they have these turtles that float because of the boat injuries, they just call them bubble butts.
Excellent. Mrs. Benedict's class, sorry, if you guys have a question now, just demute your mic and then go right ahead.
Right there.
All right. Having trouble with mics. Mrs. Pandala's class, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are sea turtles smart?
Are sea turtles smart? Was that the question?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, their brain is about the size of a peanut. So it's a very tiny brain. So they're not really intelligent like we are as people. But they certainly have been around for a very long time, and they've been around since before the dinosaurs. So they know how to survive. And when they hatch out of their egg, everything they need to know in life, they have from the beginning. So they have an instinctual knowledge right when they come out of their egg. They're on their own from day one. So the mom doesn't stay with the nest. She doesn't protect the egg. She doesn't stay with the babies. So they know what to do, where to go, and what to eat as soon as they hatch out of their egg.
Cool. All right, Miss Benedict's class. Sorry, go right ahead, guys.
Okay, who has a question? Yes, Michael.
Why do sea turtles get like names, and why do you guys name them?
So the names are actually coming from the people that rescue the turtle. So our staff here at the Turtle Hospital, we are not going out and finding the turtles. Most of the time, people are out on their boats, and they're out scuba diving, snorkeling, fishing, and they see a sick turtle. 9 times out of 10, a sick turtle is just going to be floating at the top, and it can't dive down. So they're going to give us a call. We can put together a rescue team, and we're going to give that person permission to bring the turtle onto their boat, and then we'll go meet them with our ambulance. We have a turtle ambulance, so we can meet them with our ambulance at the dock and bring the turtle into the hospital. So the people that are helping rescue the turtle, that are calling them into us, they get to choose the name.
Excellent. All right. So, Miss Sinclair, I know your mic isn't working, so if you want to type in your question now, we'll go to Mrs. Burkett's class. So if you guys have a question, go right ahead.
What do, turtles usually eat out in the wild?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What do turtles usually eat out of the wild?
It all just depends on the species of sea turtle. So the loggerheads, like Rebel right here, they're the meat eaters, and they're feeding on lobsters, crabs, conchs, shrimp, a lot of the crustaceans, whereas the green sea turtles are the herbivores, so they're feeding on the seagrass and sea lettuce. The biggest sea turtles, the leatherbacks, we don't have any here at our hospital, but the leatherbacks can weigh over 2,000 pounds. They can weigh over a ton, and their main diet is jellyfish.
Awesome. All right. So Mrs. Sinclair's class asked, why are most of the turtles loggerheads at the facility?
We do have a lot of loggerheads right now. We kind of have an even mix of greens and loggerheads. Those are just the two most common that live here in the Keys. We'll also see a few hawksbills, and we have one Kemp's Ridley that we're going to see on the other side as well.
Excellent. Mrs. Stover's class, you guys have to demute your own mic, unfortunately, but if you guys have a question, come up and go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Pedro. How much turtles do you get each year?
On average, we're rescuing about 100 to 150 turtles each year.
Excellent. All right, so Rachel, that's the whole gang. So if you want to go to the other side and show us a little more, that would be great.
Great, so we'll head on over. And this first row that we're going to head down, these are all juvenile greens. A lot of them have that FP virus. And we have some bubble butts as well. So this is Corey, and she is a green. She is very light in color, but she is a green sea turtle. They tend to darken up as they get bigger. They will get a suntan. So some of them, their scoots are shedding, and that's why they'll have different colors. But Corey is a green, and she does have bubble butt. You can see the weights on the back of her shell. Right now, we're adjusting her weights. So hers are held on with Velcro, and then when we figure out the right amount, then we'll glue them on. So she's very, very active, super cute little green, and you can see she has some lettuce in her tank, so she's still snacking on breakfast. And then we have Fran right here. So she has the FP virus. She has already had some surgeries, so you can't really see her tumors. She has some on her underside, like underneath her flippers. But for the most part, the majority of the tumors have been removed. But you will notice she's missing some of her front flipper. That is a previous injury, so it was like that when she came into the hospital. It had already healed, but it was probably from a shark. So a shark is about their only natural predator out there, and it's going to happen. Sharks eat sea turtles, and sea turtles cannot pull their head or flippers inside of their shell. Now, land turtles like tortoises, box turtles, even freshwater turtles, they can all tuck inside of their shell. But sea turtles can't because there's not enough room. You can see how flat the shell is. If they were able to pull in, it would create a lot of drag, it would slow them down, and they wouldn't be very good swimmers. Sea turtles are built for a life at sea. So the only time they come out of the water is when the mom is ready to lay her eggs on the beach. And they're very fast swimmers. They can reach speeds up to 30 miles per hour on a quick burst. So we will be able to release Fran. Even though she's missing part of her flipper, she can still swim and dive. So we will be able to release her back into the ocean after she goes that full year tumor-free. We have Stuart over here, and I'm going to show you Stuart's picture when he first came into the hospital because he had some really big tumors over his eyes. So you can kind of see those tumors right over the eyes. I know there's a little bit of a glare, but all those bumps there, those were the tumors. Now the tumors that are growing over the eyes, since that's such a sensitive area, very delicate procedure, we actually take them to an eye doctor. So that's called a veterinary ophthalmologist. And the eye doctor will remove those eye tumors. So now both of Stuart's eyes are okay. He can see, and he is tumor-free. Beautiful green. Then we've got Marvin over here, same thing, tumor-free, just has to wait out that year. And here we have Kevin. He's super cute, and he loves to scratch his shell. So he's always hanging out under the running water. He loves to play with his little turtle toys. So Kevin is very cute. Kevin had the FP virus. He's now tumor-free. But he is missing most of his front flippers, and he does have bite marks on his shell from a shark. All of their swimming and diving power, it's in the front flippers. The back flippers are used like rudders. They go from side to side to help them steer. So Kevin, he can't dive very deep. So we're not going to be able to release him back into the ocean, but we will find him a home at an aquarium. So out of the 17 turtles that can't be released, only 5 of them live here with us at the Turtle Hospital. And those 5 include Rebel, the loggerhead, Bubble Butt, the original Bubble Butt. Then we have a turtle that is blind. His name is April. He is a boy. And then we have 2 other greens. So those 5, they live here with us. The others that can't be released, we will find them a home at an aquarium. Because sea turtles are an endangered species. If an aquarium wants a sea turtle, they can't just go in the ocean and take a healthy one. It has to come from some place like us. They have to have some type of injury that's preventing them from going back into the wild. And we have sent turtles all over England, Connecticut, Chicago, San Diego, Orlando. Our biggest turtle is in Las Vegas. His name is OD, and he's 340 pounds. So if you're ever in Vegas, you can stop by the Mandalay Bay Aquarium and visit OD. This is Bernie. She has bubble butt. You can see her little bottom is floating, and she doesn't have weights on right now because her scutes are shedding, so her shell's very sensitive. So that's why she doesn't have her weights on, but we'll reattach them. So she's a little floater. And then we have Smalls over here. Now, Smalls was a lot like Chuck Norris. He was hit by a boat, and he had a really bad shell injury, and we had to put those surgical plates on top of his shell. But his shell healed, so we've already taken his plates off. And now you can see he is resting on the bottom, no longer floating, doing great. Over here, you will find the Kemp's Ridley. Her name is Bubbles. The Kemp's Ridleys are the rarest, the most endangered, and the smallest out of all the sea turtle species. They're only about 75 to 100 pounds when they're full grown. Bubbles is 66 pounds, and she's skinny, so she is considered an adult female Kemp's. And they're often called the ghost turtle. You can see that she's very light in color. She's going to blend in right with the sandy bottom. So that's why they're called the ghost turtle. Very, very unique sea turtle. And they are extremely endangered for a couple of reasons. They have a very limited range. They pretty much just stay in the Gulf of Mexico because their main nesting beach is located in Mexico. It's called Rancho Nuevo. The way the Ridleys are nesting is a completely different technique from all the other sea turtles. All the other females come up onto the beach by themselves at night to lay their eggs. They're small and white, so if they did that, they'd be easy prey for land predators. So they nest all together at the same time during the middle of the day, and that makes them easy pickings for people, and their eggs were heavily poached. So that's why they're so endangered. But now they've protected that beach in Mexico so no one can take the eggs, and they created a second nesting area. They moved some of those eggs up to South Padre Island in Texas. So now any females that hatch from South Padre, when they're ready to nest, they will go back to Texas to lay their eggs. And it's working. Their numbers are rising. So the Mexico site is back into the thousands, and the Texas site gets about 200 to 300 females every summer. Now, Bubbles came in just a couple of weeks ago. She was found floating, covered in barnacles, and just very, very skinny. So we're going to have to fatten her up, but she's already been eating lots of squid and fish, so that shouldn't take too long. And she is missing part of her front flipper, just like Fran. But she can still swim and dive, so Bubbles will be released once she has fully recovered. And over here we have Ellie. Ellie is hiding. Ellie loves to sleep under her table, so she's probably going to stay under here. But she is a hawksbill, and the hawksbills have a very sharp, pointy beak, like a bird's beak, like a hawk. They're going to use that sharp, pointy beak to tear off sponges. That's what they like to eat, so they're often found near the coral reefs. That's where you have a lot of sponges living. But Ellie is probably between 6 and 8 years old. She came in last summer with the boat strike, so she does have that bubble butt condition. But she loves to sleep under her table. And now we're going to see some little guys. So we do have some small ones, which is really cool because it's so early in the year. So this is a cool treat that you get to see these little ones today. Our nesting season runs from April through September, and it takes about 45 days for the eggs to hatch. So we usually don't see babies until the middle of summer, but we had some to come early this year. Now this is Charlie. He's a loggerhead. He's probably between a year and a year and a half. When they hatch out of their egg, they're the size of the palm of your hand. So he's a little bit bigger than that. Charlie is what we call a washback. Washbacks are babies that make it out of the nest and they get down to the ocean, but then they get stuck in some strong currents, really bad weather, big waves, and they wash back onto the beach, and they're just very tired. So we're going to keep him for a few weeks just to let him rest, make sure he can eat on his own, and then we'll release him. You'll notice how spiky his shell is. Now, this is just on the loggerheads when they're little. It's going to protect them from predators. If you look sharp and spiny, things don't want to eat you. And then as they get bigger, their shell becomes smooth. And over here we have Copper, and Bowser is in the tank right next to him. Copper and Bowser are also loggerheads, and they're almost 2 years old. So they did come in as hatchlings, as babies. They got lost. The babies hatch out at night. They have never seen light before. So when there's bright lights on the beach from houses, street lamps, hotels, they're going to go to that bright light that sends them in the wrong direction away from the ocean. And that's how they wind up in the road. So they do get lost, and they use up all their energy going the wrong way. Now, normally, again, we're only keeping babies for a few weeks. But Bowser and Copper, they're almost 2 years old. That's because they're in our Head Start program. So we're waiting until they reach 45 centimeters in length. This does take about 2 years. So they will be ready for release next month. But every week they're weighed and measured, so we're getting accurate growth data. They're like our little turtle ambassadors until they reach that size limit. They're already 25 pounds each, very, very strong. And in this next tank, this is where we're going to see the babies. So we have some hawksbill hatchlings. And these guys are just over a month old. So they are teeny tiny. And these were also considered washbacks. And you'll notice a red dot on the top of their shell. We put the red dot on there, and that just means that they're eating on their own. We feed them little squid bits, so they're now ready for release. And we will take the babies into the Gulf Stream. That's about 30 miles offshore. They're going to ride that current into the Sargasso Sea, which is 300 miles in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's full of sargassum seaweed. That stuff is brown, and it floats, so they can hide in it, and eat all the critters that live in and around it. It's a huge nursery ground for the babies, and that's where they grow up. So they're going to spend anywhere from 5 to 25 years out in the Sargasso Sea. We're just giving them a free ride. And then we have 3 hawksbills that are a little larger. They're probably between 4 and 10 months old, and they're also washbacks. They all just came in over the past few weeks, and they're all ready for release. So I'm just going to lift up the lid. We do have lids on these tanks because they are so little. If something were to get in here, like a bird or a raccoon, that way they can't get to these babies. Those are known for their beautiful shell. It's very, very shiny. So they're actually listed as critically endangered. They were almost hunted to extinction, all because of their pretty shell. They'd make all kinds of things like tortoise shell jewelry, eyeglasses, hair combs. So now anything made from a sea turtle shell, that's illegal to have here in the U.S. So now that they're protected, their numbers are coming back. So that was all the turtles. Just real quick, I'm going to show you our main pool. This is our main pool out here. It is a saltwater tidal pool, so it's still connected to the ocean, so there's lots of fish in here. This is normally where all of our big turtles live, like Bubble Butt, Rebel, all of those non-releasable turtles are normally out here in our main pool. But this week we're doing some work on the pool, so that's why we have the turtles moved to the other tank. So just wanted y'all to see that. There's some mullet out there, all kinds of fish that hang out here in the big pool, and that helps the turtles feel at home, keeps it natural. Okay, so you guys have any other questions?
Well, first of all, Rachel, thank you so much. It's definitely our only hangout where the line Bubble Butt, the original Bubble Butt, will come into play, so thank you for that. All right, so Mrs. Lynch's class, I know you guys didn't get a chance at a question last time, so what we're going to do is I'll do two with you this time. First, I'm going to go to Mrs. Brown so that you guys can think of a question. So Mrs. Brown's class, you guys have a question? Go right ahead.
Hi. So I've wanted to do the work in a rescue, rehabilitate, and release program for a while. So what are some schools, like what are the schools that you went to?
So most of our staff has a background in marine science or marine biology. I attended Coastal Carolina University, which is in South Carolina, for marine science. And all of us have worked with sea turtles before we came here. So I was working at a state park in South Carolina. It was very close to Myrtle Beach. It was called Huntington Beach State Park. But we had a huge nesting area for loggerheads. So that's how I got in with sea turtles, just working with the nesting loggerheads. So there's other places that will offer internships. There's Moat Aquarium in Sarasota. There's Clearwater Aquarium. So a lot of your major aquariums down here in Florida that have sea turtles, they're going to have really good internship programs. So that's the majority of our backgrounds.
Excellent. All right, Mrs. Lynch's class, if you guys have a question.
Is there the same amount of boys and girls?
We actually don't know how many girls and boys we have. The tail thing only works on the adults. So these little turtles, they're not done growing, so we can't go off of their tail. And the only way that you can tell if it's a boy or a girl when they're little like this is by checking inside, which we don't need to do. So we actually don't know how many boys and girls we have.
All right. Mrs. Pandola's class, do you guys have a question?
We do.
Alex.
Do you rescue sea turtle
Super loud.
eggs? Do you rescue sea turtle eggs?
So we do not get any eggs here at the hospital. We have a volunteer group, and they're called Save a Turtle. And during the nesting season, during the summertime, they walk the beaches every morning, and they look for the sea turtle nest. So they're going to mark off the nest when they find one, and then they'll just kind of watch over it to make sure no one bothers it. And then when the nest hatches, when the babies come out, they're going to do a nest survey. And that's where they dig up the nest, they count the number of eggshells to see how many eggs were laid. And that's sometimes when you have little hatchlings that are still down in the nest. Those are the late bloomers, the little stragglers. So they'll bring the little stragglers to the hospital, but we're not hatching any eggs at the hospital.
Right. Awesome. Okay, Mrs. Burkett's class, you guys are excited. Come right up.
How many places do you have, like the turtle hospital in the areas?
In Florida, there's about 20 places that can treat sea turtles, but we were the very first licensed veterinary clinic just for sea turtles. And that was back in 1986. So we were the very first veterinary clinic for sea turtles in the world. But in Florida, there's probably about 20 other places that can treat sea turtles now.
Awesome. That's really good to hear. All right. So 2 quick written-in questions from Mrs. Sinclair's class. Do you have a favorite turtle?
No, it is really hard to have a favorite turtle. They're all really awesome, and you get attached to all of them.
And a little longer, if a turtle has a tumor around its neck, could it potentially choke it so that it couldn't eat? Would that be a potential problem?
Around the neck, it most likely wouldn't hinder the eating ability. Now, when the tumors grow over the mouth and then the turtle is not able to capture food, that's a problem. But usually the neck tumors aren't a big problem for eating.
Excellent. Mrs. Lynch's class, since you guys didn't get a chance the first time, if you guys have another question, go right ahead.
No. Ask the question.
All loggerheads on the list?
Are loggerheads on the endangered list?
They are, so all 7 species are protected under the Endangered Species Act here in the United States. Now the greens and loggerheads, they have recently been delisted, so they're now considered threatened, which is good. That means their numbers are coming back, but they are still protected under that act.
Excellent. All right, last but not least, Mrs. Stouffer's class, if you guys are able to demute your mic, if you have a question, go right ahead. I know it's tricky sometimes. There you go.
How many sea turtles?
I think you're still muted.
No, you're good. No, now you're muted again. There you go. No. No, so we didn't get that. One more time, so demute it and then come up and ask again. I'll tell you when you're good. So you're muted now. Now you're demuted. You're perfect.
How many turtles have been in the turtle hospital?
Excellent.
So in our 31 years, we have released over 3,000.
Outstanding. How many do you have right now?
Right now we have 48.
All right. Well, guys, I know everyone's heading for lunch soon, so what we're going to do, like we do at the end of every hangout, is I'm going to demute everybody's microphone, and you guys can say a big thank you to Rachel. So Mrs. Lynch's, Mrs. Brown, Bandela, Burkett, Sinclair, all of you, you're all demuted. You want to say thanks to Rachel for a great hangout? So thank you, Rachel. Awesome. All right, Rachel, thanks so much. What a great hangout.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Yeah, we hope to have you all exploring by the seat of your pants again soon. And the Turtle Hospital, we hope to have you guys back anytime you'd like. Have a lovely rest of the day, everyone.